Welcome back to Racing Rundown here on YouTube. I'm Eric DeCoster. Welcome back to another 2023 Kentucky Derby profile as we take a look at Angel of Empire, the quickly improving son of Classic Empire for trainer Brad Cox, of course, one of the hottest trainers in the country over the past few years. Comes in with his top Derby runner, one of three to four he could have, depending on when you're listening to this. Angel of Empire won the Risen Star Stakes two back, won the Arkansas Derby last time out, is doing it all right. Like I said, getting better, and comes into the Derby with a lot of great qualities that we'll dive into over this preview. This is a goal who won 4 from 6 starts with a second to go along with it, and his only real bad performance was on the turf at Kentucky Downs last fall. So you draw a line right through that race that clearly did not fit him, and of course he's making a lot of good sense leading into the biggest race of his career. He'll be ridden by Flavien Prat for the second time. This is actually the first time in his career the Derby will be where he's been ridden by the same rider in consecutive races. He had the same rider in Marcelino Pedrosa when he won both of his starts at Horseshoe Indianapolis, but those weren't even consecutive. It was the first and third starts of his career. Pratt rode Angel of Empire last time in the Arkansas Derby after Luis Saez decided to ride in Florida that day, and Pratt chose this colt over Kingsbarns, the impressive winner of the Louisiana Derby. So a lot to analyze there from a jockey perspective alone, but a lot of positives for our subject here. Angel of Empire. He's had back-to-back wins at the high levels. He's had 3 really good Derby preps all in all. He ran a good second in the Smarty Jones Stakes back on January 1st. Rallied well, but the pace typically was not there for him, but he picked off horses late and then took that to go win the Risen Star by a length over a few horses that will also be running in the Kentucky Derby, like Sun Thunder and Two Phils, who were second and third. It was a big, bold rally, a great ride by Luis Saez. And also threw a career high buyer at the time, an 89 there, improved very much on other metrics as well. Like Brisbane, he threw a 97, which was an 11-point improvement from his previous career high of an 86 put up in the Smarty Jones. Well, win the Risen Star, still pretty disrespected. I mean, for a Grade 2 winner heading into the Arkansas Derby, went off at a 9-2 and dominated that group. Won by 4 1/4 lengths after sitting a good off-the-pace trip, let the speed unfold in front of him, and picked them all off from there to a daylight win under Flavien Prat. And once again, he was really not being asked through the wire, and once again threw a career high figure, a 94 and a 101 on Brisnet. So a horse is improving on his figures, improving obviously on ability as well. And then on top of all that, he does have the best back class in this entire race. You'll look at the horses he beat last time out. There's a pair of horses who ran in the Arkansas Derby who will also be in the Kentucky Derby, and Reincarnate and Rocket Can. They're both graded stakes winners early on the trail. Reincarnate, he won this Shan. Rocket Can won the Holy Bowl and ran second to Forte. And even further back, you had Red Route 1, who already is a winner since the Arkansas Derby, having won the Bathhouse Row Stakes on a quick turnaround from the Arkansas Derby, and he could potentially be running into Preakness off that. He has a free berth now from there. And then also the Risen Star. I already kind of touched on it with Sun Thunder and Two Phils, but plenty of good runners exited that race for a lot of good connections and horses that were really well regarded heading into, I might add. He turned the tables on Victory Formation, who he beat in the Smarty Jones, so obviously that's a positive in his corner because the race set up a little bit more favorably for him. But even further down outside of that, Sun Thunder, Two Phils, Tabit's Conquest was always a highly regarded runner for Brad Cox. Krupe was a horse that ran in the Wood Memorial, right? So he beat tons of horses who prepped on the Derby Trail, which not everybody can say, but regardless, a really, really big win for Angel of Empire there that he backed up once more. We've been really positive on this horse at this point. Let's look at the cons. The buyer last time out, while still improving, was still one of the weaker among the winners of your final preps. I believe only Lord Miles from the 100-point races threw a weaker number, and even some of those 50-point races, it wasn't as strong as I think. Obviously, the Sunland Derby would be lower, but all in all, while he showed improvement by a few points, it still, by that logic, does not match up with some of the other contenders in this race. But that is just buyer. You'll look at some other figures. Once again, right back to Brisnet. It's about fourth, or tied for fourth, I should say, amongst their last race speed figures. You throw a 101 there. Two Phils had the best, and then the top two from the Bluegrass were tied for second there. So kind of conflicting there. I think all in all, visually, it was one of the most impressive wins. And I'll say this because he won by so much. He won by 4.25 lengths. Most of the other winners of their 100 points or even 50-point preps cannot say the same. Forte only won by a length. Practical Move barely got the bob in the Santa Anita Derby. Tapit Trice and Verifying threw it down the entire stretch. Two Phils, of course, won by a bit more, but there's questions about the surface there and the quality of competition all in all. The Wood Memorial by a nose. He blew this field out in a good field at that, probably the deepest field of these 100-point prep races, in my opinion, at least. I'm sure many would agree. So I think that we started out as a con, but I was able to turn that around. That visually was a little bit more impressive. But if you are a speed figure person, that does have to concern you for quite a bit, at least from a buyer perspective. I think my biggest knock on him is that he got the perfect trips in his two biggest wins. I think that with how the race is set up, it would have been very tough for him not to win. If he had the talent, if we knew he had the talent, it would have been very reasonable to say he should not lose this race because the race is going to set up so perfectly for him. In the Risen Star, sure, he had to kind of navigate through traffic, which of course is another positive towards the Derby, but he still had a quick pace to run into. Two Phils, for instance, made the lead at the top of the stretch after the favorite victory formation kind of folded things up after being hustled from an outside post. And the Two Phils wasn't able to hold on because it was one of those last run races, and he was making that last run. And Sun Thunder ran second there. I think Sun Thunder's an interesting case study in this Kentucky Derby, and we'll talk about it more in my profile of him. But still, that's a horse who's very pace dependent. And if he's coming late, that kind of tells you that, okay, Angel of Empire definitely benefited from the setup. And then the Arkansas Derby was absolutely the same. We saw Reincarnate and Rocket Can, two of the top choices in the betting, both be very forwardly placed, chasing a horse with sprinter speed named 2 Equals River. And it set up perfectly for him. He came over the top, took him out. And once again, kind of that long shot running second thing, King Russell, the runner-up, really had no business being the runner-up. But because the speed was backing up, he was able to move by him late and pick up place honors. So that's kind of going to hurt him because as we go to our final con, his running style is a one-run type. I mean, he's a little bit more shifty in the sense that he's not a big clunky rich strike type. I think it's perfect to compare him to draw him parallel to Rich Strike and say how do they defer despite being off the pace runners. Angel of Empire is clearly an athletic, could probably sit a little closer if he really felt like it kind of horse. I think if you go back even to his maiden win, right, back in August of last year, he sat about mid-pack, but he was still only 2 to 3, 4 lengths from the lead at most points in that race. So for me, that kind of tells me, okay, he can be a little bit more adaptable. Whereas a horse like Rich Strike or we'll say a Sun Thunder, to make a comparison to this year's Derby, they're just going to lag along and pick off as many horses as they can. Like, he's not that horse. He can make the moves when it matters. He can be shifty, versatile, and agile. So that's the one benefit. But regardless, he does want to have some targets in front of him to be picking off late in the game. And with how this Derby draws up, I don't know if that's going to be very beneficial to him. I think that you need to be probably the first half of this field to be a factor. And if they do that, are you taking him out of his game too much based off what he's done in his last 4 starts? Because in his last 4 starts, he's been coming from off the pace, and it's set up perfectly for him in those last 2. So it's going to be tricky, but Flavien Prat, of course, is a guy you'd want to have to work out a trip like that. It's going to be fascinating to see how he's handled in the race. There's really no telling until it comes up. But I think that you factor in how he's won his last 2 races, and then you add on to it his overall running style. It does hurt him in the sense that it could cost him, winning this race because no one else is backing up. They keep going because the pace is just slow enough for that first half of the horses to benefit. But regardless, the talent is there with Angel of Empire. He's moving in the right direction for the right connections. He's doing all the right things and answering all the questions. I just realized that rhymed. That was a pretty good rhyme right there. But regardless, he is what you like in a tried and true Kentucky Derby contender, a horse that's getting better. But I think the biggest thing that will hurt him is how the race will set up. So he's a fascinating horse to analyze, but I'd be hard pressed to find a reason not to include him on tickets heading into the Derby, and he very well could be our pick, or my pick at least, when we do our racing rundown full field preview in that first part of the week, right after the Kentucky Derby draw on Monday, May 1st. So we'll see then what I think about him, but for now I think he's a very favorable proposition come Kentucky Derby time. That's all I have for you. We'll see you next time here on Racing Rundown.